90% of all millionaires become so through owning real estate. That was Andrew Carnegie, one of the wealthiest entrepreneurs of all time. This is just as relevant today as it was more than a century ago. While some of the most successful entrepreneurs in the world have built their wealth through real estate, what may be shocking is that only around 32% of real estate investors are women. Today, we're going to find out why more women are not investing in real estate from someone who is determined to change that. She is the female real estate rock star, the founder of Invest in the Smoky Mountains, Josh's Cabins, and a leading coach and mentor for buyers on building generational wealth through short-term rentals. Serving as an inspiration for success, she is on a mission to empower 1,000 women to become millionaires through real estate investing. Please welcome to Spotlight Television, Leslie Ann Morris. Leslie Ann, welcome to Spotlight Television.
Thank you, Damon. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, it's great to have you here. So, as I like to do at the beginning of every show, tell the audience a little bit about yourself and tell the audience a little bit about what this passion to drive for women in real estate. That's an amazing stat. I'm sure that's a surprise to people, 32%. So tell us a little bit about yourself and this passion you have for getting women into investing in real estate.
Yeah, sure. I mean, this started as a young child. I did a lot of women's empowerment stuff with my father. He's a martial arts sensei. So studied martial arts as a young girl, would go into women's shelters, help lift women up. And I've carried that into the future. I had a long career in commercial banking, primarily working with really large clients like SpaceX was one of the clients I worked with in banking. But kind of just got to a point where I said, what's next, what's out there? And I began investing in real estate, particularly cabins in eastern Tennessee in the Smoky Mountains, which is where all my companies are now. And I was able to kind of create the American dream for myself. I was able to scale this real estate portfolio in a really compressed time frame. And in about 36 months, I quit my job in banking, left that entire life behind, and went full-time as a real estate investor. Now I lead an agent team, I have the property management company, and it's all in the wide world of cabins. So then I kind of got to this point where I think it was a conversation with my mother. She said, you know, Leslie, what is your goal here? Are you gonna have 1,000 cabins? And I'm like, well, no, I have all the money that I want and need, and I'm happy, I'm fulfilled, so what's next for me? And that's when I decided that I wanted to focus on 1,000 women becoming millionaires in real estate investing. I was at a conference, real estate conference. I go and speak all over the nation at these things, and at one of them, another speaker in her discussion was talking about the fact that 1/3 of investors are women. And that just kind of was shocking to me. I thought, you know, because I'd heard that statistic about, you know, Andrew Carnegie quoting that the wealth is coming from that investing vehicle particularly. So it felt like a little bit of a disparity that maybe we could focus some energy on. So now I'm creating it into a nonprofit. I'm really focused on, you know, screaming it from the rooftop, if you will. I partnered with Forbes. I'm on their business council. So I did a lot of research around the statistic and the why and how and what, and just focused on being the mover and shaker in that industry to make some changes.
Yeah, I would think most people that would be a shocking stat, 32%. It was to me when I saw it in preparation to talk to you. So I was interested if the person who was giving that stat in that speech was saying it as a positive thing, like, oh, 1/3 of, or were they looking at it as only 1/3 of? Because to me, I would be surprised to say, wow, only 1/3.
Yeah, it was more like trying to get women to kind of stand up and join us in investing. You know, there are quite a few women, there are 1/3. Yeah. But let's be honest, that's a lot less than a half, which is where it should be.
Let's go back to some of your earlier life as you laid out for us, 20 years commercial banking. Let's talk about that industry a little bit, because it'll lead me into the question of the atmosphere that we're in right now and when it comes to real estate. So, but first, tell me a little bit about your background in that commercial space and what did you take from that immediately you felt like helped you when you started doing this?
Yeah, well, so I was with primarily US Bank. It was the largest company that I worked for, but also worked for other banks as well. But it was about a 23-year career. Started as a teller and literally climbed the rungs. I do hold a master's degree from the University of Southern California, so that helped, but I had hands-on work experience. would say within just the first few years of the banking career, I dove into the world of business banking. So at the end, I was a commercial corporate banker. I did a lot of large debt structures. And then in the capacity that I worked with companies like SpaceX, I did receivables and payables. A rare exception to the rule, I know a lot about how to get loans to buy real estate and how to run efficient companies. I have that in my background. So I'm not just your average person off the street buying property. I think that's what sets me apart and makes me different and gives me the confidence to help others do the same thing.
So let's talk about your company, Invest in the Smoky Mountains. That's a pretty specific title to a pretty specific area. You hear location, location, location. What attracted you to this location to name your company after it?
Everybody asks me this and I'm like, actually, I knew absolutely nothing about Tennessee. I didn't know anyone there, no family. I was living and working in Los Angeles at the time and just wanted a way to begin building wealth. I was actually going to buy in Ohio where the price per square foot was extremely low and the deal blew up overnight. And I pivoted and found the Smoky Mountains. I found vacation homes. My thought process on it was, if I could buy a cool vacation home that I'd want to go visit and stay in myself, then other people might want to book that off of websites like Airbnb and Expedia, Vrbo, and then we have some direct booking that we do. But it just worked really, really well, and instead of it breaking even, I was making more cash than I can even mention, and I was using that cash to buy more cabins.
So you have the Invest in the Smoky Mountains company, but you did an interesting thing. You started Josh's Cabins.
Yeah.
So tell me about how that started and obviously how the two work together.
Yeah. Well, Josh is my ex-husband. We had started investing together. And then after our divorce, we continued to be business partners. So it works really well. And so how we have that set up is Invest in the Smoky Mountains is an agent team. So we're going to recommend what you buy. We wouldn't sell you something we wouldn't buy ourselves, unless, of course, that's what you want to buy. And we help you with the underwriting to make sure that it will make money and perform. And we help refer you to people that can sell you insurance, provide your lending opportunity for you. I've had people get into the deals with, little to no cash down because there's obviously other avenues you can pull cash from. So that's that company. And then Josh's Cabins, we are full service valet property management, specifically in the Smoky Mountains. So once you buy it, if you live out of state and you want to own it passively, you hand the keys to Josh's Cabins and we can actually manage it for you. We can list it on websites like Airbnb. We make sure during guests checking in and checking out that it's cleaned. And we also can rehab, remodel, do projects that are based on increasing ROI in the properties. So I've really thought about every revenue stream possible and anything a client could want and offering it as a one-stop shop.
Yeah. So, and speak a little more to the importance of that management company, because that really is, especially as you said, someone who's, say, living in New York, investing there, knowing that management company, having faith in what they do, having faith in the people, that's such an important thing, because especially if you're looking to expand, you want to know, hey, I've got a group here on the ground that can really handle not only my expansion, but I don't have to worry.
No, totally. And I think the biggest thing that I tell people that really sells them on what we're doing is, I created the management company when I got to 5 cabins and I couldn't do it myself anymore. I needed a team. So I created the team to manage my cabins. So I'm not going to sell you on something that's not working for me. That's the biggest thing. So I say we're valet, I say we're boutique. We aren't trying to overthrow large corporations like Vacasa that are doing this to a massive scale. We are partnering with folks that buy cabins from us that think like we do. I co-authored a book called Hospitable Hosts, and that book is really focused on stories of entrepreneurs that are focused on client satisfaction. So this is the vacationers coming into the cabins. So we aren't just thinking of the bottom dollar. We are thinking of creating these amazing vacation experiences that families will want to come back for.
Yeah, that's interesting. Creating experiences, that's a great way to say it. So obviously you're extremely busy, you're expanding your business. So I'm interested in why, instead of just focusing on yourself, you have this passion to get to others, to inspire women to look at what you've done, to say, hey, you can do this too. It's not out of your reach. You travel the country. So talk to me a little bit about why you're not just focused on building your business and this passion that burns inside you to motivate others.
One of the biggest strategies I have personally is I don't want to live off of the income from the cabin portfolio that I have. I want that to build generational wealth for me, which is one of the things I'm doing to help women. I don't think they think a lot of times about that generational wealth. They also don't think about if something happened to your significant other, how are you going to, insurance is only going to get you so far. What's that next thing that you could develop on? So I work with quite a few women that come with inheritances, and they're like, help me create some sort of passive income so that I don't just live off of this money that I have. So that's a big thing that I focus on. And I think just like I have it deep inside my soul, I guess, that I really am focused on becoming a motivational speaker. I feel like every time I talk to somebody, I find some way to touch them or help improve their life. It's just an innate skill that I've developed. And so what better way to do something that you love and you're passionate about that you're also good at? So that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, and you make a good point, because there's so many, especially obviously the younger generation, but even people I would say in the 40s, 50s, 60s, I'm kind of my age, I'm 51. There's not enough education about building wealth, not building generational wealth, but just even building passive income. There's a lot of tools out there. Obviously, real estate still probably is the number one tool to do it. But there's not a lot of education even for people to understand how to start a company, how to start it properly, where to start it, what state to start it in. All of these kind of things factor into that business mindset, and there's not enough of it going on.
You're right. There's not like somebody that can really coach you through the whole process. So I'm trying to bridge that gap with what I'm doing. And I think there are more players in this Airbnb. I hate to use that term. We like to say short-term rental because we don't want to rely on one booking source. But there's a lot of these Airbnb influencers out there. So just check and see what their portfolio looks like. What does it consist of? Make sure they invest in the market where you're interested. Caveat, I do coach in all markets because I've owned in multiple states, actually building a new portfolio in the Rocky Mountains in Colorado right now. And I've owned in Alabama and Florida. And any kind of deal that makes sense for me, I can kind of take that down because I have a team. But I would say if you don't want to follow in my footsteps and build out companies, then you want to find somebody in your market that's similar to what I'm doing,
Yeah. All right, let's do the most important thing we can do today. Let's tell people how to get in touch with you. Let's tell them where they can find you, not only on the web, but are you have any speaking events coming up? Lay out the case for how people can get in touch with you.
Yeah, totally. It's cabinladyleslie.com. That's my website right now. That gets you to like pretty much personally everything that I own. You could look at what's in my portfolio, where I'm speaking next, and it also links out to all the companies. If you specifically are looking to buy a cabin, that's investinthesmokymountains.com. And if you want to rent a cabin, that's joshscabins.com. One of the things that I love to do is educate for free through Instagram. And on Instagram, I'm at leslie.ann.morris. But again, all of this can be linked just from the cabinladyleslie.com website.
This has been a fascinating conversation. Congratulations on all the success and continued success in the future. And thanks for coming on Spotlight Television.
Thank you, Damon. Appreciate it.
Today we're going to talk about fractional HR and how it is revolutionizing businesses. Considered a game changer, fractional HR offers a host of benefits that can empower a business to thrive and tap into a wealth of advantages. Joining me today is Eric Torigian, the Managing Director of CHRO Solutions. He's a highly effective business leader with 20 plus years of global experience, driving organizational performance through strategic HR leadership. Known as an HR influencer and pioneer of fractional HR, Eric is transforming the world of human resources. Eric, welcome to Spotlight Television.
Thanks, Damon. It's great to be back. It's wonderful to see you again.
It's great to see you again, too. We did speak earlier in the year, and I went back and listened to that conversation, and I said something in my opening that's very interesting. I said this would be the year, 2023 would be the year for small to mid-sized businesses to gain an advantage through fractional HR. Has that happened?
Yeah, and what a year it's been. And what we've seen is more and more movement towards this private equity ownership of companies. What we're seeing there is a drive around performance. And then as we talked, how do you drive performance in an organization, but it's leadership effectiveness. So the more that we're seeing fractional HR drive leadership effectiveness, we're seeing performance come in these companies, and it's just been a wonderful year.
All right, so you said a lot of great stuff there, but let's talk to the audience just a little bit. Let's take a step backwards. Let's, on the most basic level, for someone hearing this for the first time, what is fractional HR?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's something that I answer a lot. And what you have is this mid-sized market company, right? They can't afford to go hire a global CHRO. And if they wanted to, I'd tell them they're crazy, because you're just going to put all this administrative burden on your company that you don't need. So what the fractional executive does is we have a model where you can get all of this experience, you can get this thought leadership, you can get this critical thought on your team at an affordable package price.
So how did you get into this? This is, I'm sure there's a big swath of the audience that's maybe hearing this for the first time, hasn't really heard about fractional HR. How did you find your way into this business?
Yeah, it was an interesting journey. So I've spent 30 years in transformational HR. So I've worked for some of the biggest names, Ford, Pepsi, Comcast, NBC, Universal. One of my last full-time roles, I was the global CHRO for a financial services company. We grew from 2,000 to 8,000 global employees and went through a private equity transaction. So at the end of the transaction, I was getting ready to go look for another big HR role. And I thought to myself, well, if this is what I'm going to do, and this is what I'm really good at, there's a lot of companies that could utilize these services, but they don't need to go hire a full-time person of my level. So can I package this together and do this for a group of companies? And that's what I created. I started this in January of 22, and it's been just this exciting run and really pioneering the usage of fractional HR executives at a price point that these smaller companies can afford, but giving them world-class HR.
Yeah, and you say price point, and that leads me into kind of the next thing I want to talk about, because I think when companies, when they contract for a fractional executive, let's talk about what kind of cost the business incurs. Recruiting, PTO, employee benefits. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so there's a lot of costs in there, and I think you've nailed a very important subject. What we found has worked the best for my clients is we're able to do a fixed fee. So they can put into their budget, it's a fixed fee, it's a reoccurring expense, and then we don't sit and try to do billable hours like your labor attorneys will, and it's a much simpler system for them to use. Then what you get is we're managing all those expenses. So we manage all of those costs for you. What you also get is a HR team who now understands people operations expenses, or PEOPEX as people like to call it nowadays, right? But we're a group, and I'll give you a great example. I have a client company. I came in, we looked at their benefits. They were way out of line for the size of company they had. Administratively, they spent more time administrating their benefits for 300 employees than we spent for 8,000 employees.
Wow.
The costs were way out of board. They had a broker who was loading them up with high commission products. So we blew it up, took it all apart, put together a new benefits plan for them, and they're going to save anywhere from $70,000 to $150,000 a year, give their employees better benefits that are more recognized in the marketplace, and their employees' weekly contribution went down. So think about this as a business owner. Your employee experience improved, your employee's paycheck improved, so that's the cost of eggs calculation, right? So their take-home pay went up. Now they have a brand name insurance card in their pocket, and I took all this administrative burden that your HR and finance team was dealing with and moved it to the broker who's a more effective broker. That's what fractional HR can do for a company.
Yeah. And speaking of the companies, and let's say the company size, because when you think about like a high-level C-suite executive, you'd figure that would come at a tremendous cost. And if you're a startup, let's say you've got 10 employees, 50 employees, and you're thinking, man, I really need that high-powered brain, somebody who's been there. I want to buy that experience, but that's got to come at a tremendous cost. So if you're a startup or a smaller company, and you could talk to me about the size of companies you're working with, does fractional HR help you kind of get that upper level C-suite executive, but maybe not at the cost that you would think it brings to the company?
Yeah, Damon, that's exactly what fractional HR is able to do. So I work with companies. I have a client who has 2 employees, but they need that high level thought leadership right now around their organization. They have a very high likelihood of scaling. And as I tell everybody, if you take a broken system and scale it, you just get a very broken system.
Yeah.
So now's the time to lay down your processes, put your systems in place. All the way up to companies, we have companies that have 4,000 employees. The typical size, to get to your question, that 200 to 300 employees, they're going to do around 70 to 100 million a year in revenue. They have a CFO on the team. They don't have an HR leader today, or maybe they have an administrative HR person. Maybe they're using a PEO, a professional employment organization. Maybe they're using ADP or a payroll provider to do their HR processing. These are going to get your compliance. They're going to get your basic daily HR work done. They're not going to get you strategic thought leadership. No one's going to sit down and say, here's what our 5-year people plan has to look like. Here's our strategy around benefits for the next 5 years. Here's our strategy around raises. This is how we're going to do compensation. Here's how we're going to recruit. This is how our employee value proposition. This is how we're going to go to market to go hire people for your firm. That's what you need someone at that C-suite level. But again, as you said, if I'm running a small firm, I got 50 people in there, we're running really lean, I can't go spend the kind of figures I need to for a global CHRO. But if you can engage with my firm, we do it for a fixed fee, you can work it into your budget, and you'll get all that thought leadership.
Let's talk about, you mentioned private equity in your opening. Let's talk about private equity, because you think about what private equity does. They go in, they find either distressed companies that need a turnaround. You think about what they do. They try to pick them up, turn them around, either unload them, take them public. I guess there's many avenues of what private equity does. Fractional HR executives, when you think about them in driving performance at private equity, talk to me about that.
Yeah, so typically what you see when a private equity purchases a portfolio company is they're buying it from an owner, from a founder, someone who sort of grew this from the grassroots. Many times this grows beyond their capability as a business person. So it's a passion project, but they do it well, and they do such a good job of it that it grows. Now it sort of outgrows their leadership capability. So they go look for ownership. They partner with a private equity firm. Private equity brings in a couple things, right? Equity and capital. So they give you money to help run the business, but then they give you support around things like financial leadership, how to do your modeling your finances, how to do future looks for your financials. Very good at operations. They're very good at managing supply chain. Where they're weaker is on managing people. So that's where my firm comes in, and we help put leadership effectiveness in.
Here's an interesting question. Can you work with a company that already has HR in place? Let's say they're moderately successful. The company seems to be moderately happy with them, but maybe there's something missing and they contact you or you contact them. Is there something that you can do to work with a company that already has some of this in place?
What I've found is having a great HR leader in place, this is not about pushing him or her out of their role. This is about making them more effective in their role. So if I can bring all of these tools, processes around leadership in place, we can really amplify what they're able to do. So it takes the really, really good HR leader and amplifies what they're able to do for the organization.
Yeah, and that's interesting. It leads me to my next question to you, because I know besides what you're doing at CHRO, obviously, when people obviously listen to you, even hear and watch you, obviously you're very engaged, very personable, and I know you've taken on some kind of, and obviously it's important to your business too, but some other more personal coaching, dealing with individuals one-on-one. Talk to me a little bit about what you've done in that arena and why it's so important to you.
Yeah, it is very, very important to me. And one of the things I decided when I started this was I was going to do something different. And I developed this tool that I use a lot now with people as I'm coaching them. And what we do is we use a graph, we make two axes. And up the vertical axis, we put how much do you enjoy a task? And across the bottom axis, we graph how much are organizations willing to pay. So how much can you monetize this thing? So real quickly, you get 4 quadrants. So what I found is when I start to do this with people and start to graph out their capabilities versus the value to the company, and I do this for private equity firms too with their teams, and we just call it something different. We call it capabilities and we call it EBITDA impact. But you really start to see that many times you have people who are not even working on the right things. So as I can start to influence you into that upper quadrant, then I can really light you on fire. What I can't do is give you passion. That's got to come. But hopefully when I build this framework for you and I show you the guardrails and I encourage you along, and people told me my energy is contagious, so they pick up a bit of it, we get it running and rolling, it works great. I've seen people who've done it and they've sat and they keep wanting me to push them, and they're just it's not gonna work.
Yeah. Well, your energy is contagious. There's no doubt about that. Let's tell people where they can get more information, obviously on all your techniques, everything you're doing, how to contact the company if they're interested in working with you. Tell everybody where they can go to get more information.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to having a discussion with everybody. So there's a couple ways you get a hold of me. And I've been doing this at every job I've ever had. Here's my personal cell phone number, 248-207-1253. You can call me, you can text me. I will tell you this, if you call me, I'm not going to recognize your phone number. I'm not going to answer it. But I got this new technology. It's called voicemail. Leave me a message. We'll get back to you. We'll talk to you. We'll engage in the discussion. You can email me. It's eric.torigian@chrosolutions-us.com. You can find us on LinkedIn. I post every day, 8:15 a.m., a topic on leadership, private equity, careers. Come join in the discussion. We have some great engagement there, some great discussions. We're on Instagram @Corner Office Lessons. We're on YouTube. You can find our YouTube channel, Lessons from the Corner Office. We're just looking to have the discussion, engage in the conversation.
That's great stuff. Eric, thank you so much. I'm sure people will reach out. It's been a great discussion. Thank you for appearing on Spotlight Television.
Thanks, Damon. It was a pleasure to be here.